Well, they've made 22 feature films, won a ton of awards, and set a bar so high that perfectly average films are deemed shit. And today I'm going to be ranking every Pixar feature film from what I deem worst to best. Just a warning that this video may contain spoilers. And seeing as I'm going to be talking about Disney and Pixar movies, I figured it'd be good to discuss them with a fellow YouTuber. Oh, hey Sophie, how you doing? I was just about to check out Pixar movies. You want to join?
Absolutely. I love them.
Awesome. Welcome aboard.
To infinity and beyond!
Number 22. The Good Dinosaur. The Good Dinosaur genuinely bored me as a teen, and revisiting as an adult, it's honestly gotten no better. The backgrounds are absolutely gorgeous, but not only do they clash horribly with the cartoony toilet-headed dinosaurs, but half the time, the film doesn't really let you absorb them. They just show these amazing aerial shots for about a second, before cutting to Arlo running around with a man on his back like a train in the night. That's part of why the end credits are my favourite part of the film, because then you actually get to absorb these amazing backgrounds. One of my main problems with The Good Dinosaur is the wasted opportunity. The idea that the meteorite never struck the Earth, and thus dinosaurs live alongside humans, is an interesting idea, but the film doesn't really do anything with it. While the Super Mario Bros. Movie is awful, at least it does something so memorably bizarre with its world building. The only really bizarre scene in this film is when they eat rotten fruit and hallucinate, but it's honestly completely pointless. There is ultimately no reason for this movie to be about dinosaurs. It's literally a kid's journey of getting home along with a human who essentially acts like a dog. Considering that the cave boy's name is Spot, they may as well have just replaced him with the actual dog Spot. The script is problematic as well. I never understood how Arlo and Spot managed to survive a similar mudslide to the one that killed Arlo's dad, especially given that Arlo's dad was way bigger and stronger than both of them. I also never understood why Arlo got to make his mark on the silo at the end. I'm not gonna lie, while how it should have ended is usually done for laughs, their take on The Good Dinosaur is exactly how the film should have ended. Most of all though, the film plagiarises The Lion King an awful lot. Protagonist's dad dies? Check. Protagonist gets lost? Check. Protagonist ends up in Stampede? Check. Protagonist has vision of dead dad? Check. It just reaches the point where I could just sync the audio from these scenes up with these ones, and it wouldn't make any difference. I don't even know what else to say. It's just boring, derivative, and a wasted opportunity. Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on The Good Dinosaur?
So I did like the Good Dinosaur film, just because it's Disney and Arlo is a really lovable character, but I completely agree that it's just like a remake of The Lion King but prehistorical. I think they should have done a more original plot. It's quite interesting to see dinosaurs, kids love them. For example, like the Land Before Time series, I grew up watching that, so when I saw Disney was doing a dinosaur film I was really excited, but then it just wasn't original in any way, so it is unfortunate, but I agree that it does rank pretty low.
Number 21. Brave. As a kid I didn't think too much of Brave, and I still don't really as an adult. The animation is absolutely gorgeous, the music's nice, Billy Connolly is great as Fergus, and has a funny line every so often. I like how they keep Merida out of marrying a prince, and I like how it shows a mother-daughter relationship, which a lot of films don't, although Ladybird is a superior alternative. And that's about it. The story is derivative and predictable. They borrow plot points from Brother Bear, an already mediocre Disney film as is. Most of the humour isn't funny, relying on jokes such as bare bottoms. Just because it was funny in The Simpsons doesn't mean it's funny in everything.
Hey, Mr. Bird, blah, blah, blah.
Belching, and this. And it's just not as interesting or creative as some of Pixar's other movies, or even Wreck-It Ralph, which I always thought should have got Best Animated Feature. It's alright, but not one of my favourites, even as a kid.
You look absolutely beautiful.
Nuns! Nuns! Reverse! Reverse!
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Brave?
I actually do love the Brave film. I think it's probably one of my favourites. Like you say, it's really stunning. Like the animation is incredible. I didn't realise at the time actually, but it does have a similar plot to Brother Bear with the whole transformation, but it does have its redeeming qualities. Obviously it's quite feminist. She was one of the first Disney princesses or Disney characters to not want a love interest, which was really good. So yeah, I definitely do like that film. I think but I do like like I said, I love every film. Especially Disney. I'm not picky, so yeah, that's pretty high on my list.
Number 20. Cars 2. I loved this film as a kid, and while I still enjoyed it as an adult, it's not a great film. I don't find it as bad as most people, but the mixed reviews don't surprise me so much. Maybe if it had been marketed as a spin-off and not a sequel, perhaps it wouldn't have been so hated. Either way though, the script of this film isn't the best, and there are problems with it. And had I seen this film for the first time as an adult, I would have seen the twist villain a mile away. There are things I do like about this movie nonetheless though. The animation is brilliant and a step up from a lot of Pixar's previous movies. The music by Michael Giacchino is amazing. The new characters are pretty awesome, particularly Finn McMissile and Holly Shiftwell. The action scenes are awesome, and that's pretty much it. Contrary to popular opinion, I don't actually find Mater that irritating, aside from maybe when he sings the advert song. And I'd rather spend time with him as a character than those annoying comic relief side characters that were thrown into otherwise excellent Disney films, like The Hunchback of Notre and Moana. Overall, just watching it is fun, following the plot is not so much fun. But I put it over Brave, because while neither of them are particularly well written or subversive, Cars 2 is more fun to watch, and I did love it as a kid. Brave was just always decent to me, even as a kid.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Cars 2?
So, Cars is actually one of my favourite Disney Pixar films, so I was excited to see that they were doing a sequel. I do like the characters in it, like you say, like Holly Shiftwell, and it's an interesting plot. I don't think anyone was expecting Mater to become a secret agent. Spoiler alert. So I do love that film. I think any Cars film I would like, so yeah. It was a bit of a leap though, to go from the first Cars film and then have secret agents, but I think kids love it. But I would watch it again.
Number 19. Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2 has some good elements, but there's also so much that makes it inferior to the original. Even though the action isn't quite up to the first film, there's still some fun action to be had, and the way Jack-Jack's powers are explored and used is pretty entertaining. The animation is good, although some of the designs look an awful lot like a video game cutscene, and there's still some pretty great dialogue that has a very adult-orientated feel to it, and that's pretty much it. The story feels way too derivative of the first film, which made it really predictable as a result. There's a lot that doesn't make sense, especially how Winston and Evelyn's father died. By the way, pointing out the stupidity of his actions doesn't redeem the stupidity of his motives. The film once again uses a twist villain, which I am bored of seeing in Disney and Pixar movies. And the villain's motives make no sense. Spoiler alert, the villain is Evelyn, and she wants superheroes outlawed because they couldn't save her father. Even though they were outlawed at the time, and she fucking knows that. But then why are you sending Elastigirl out to save the world? That won't make superheroes look bad, that'll have the opposite effect. So, yeah, Evelyn is nowhere near as good a villain as Syndrome. The film also seems to forget several elements from the first film, and since Brad Bird came back to write and direct, there is no excuse for that. It forgets the fact that Edna had to stitch up Mr. Incredible's quote-unquote hobo suit. It even forgets that Dash can run on water. How the fuck did you forget such a great moment from the original? It also lacks the fantastic emotional depth or character development that made the first film so strong. So yeah, it's a decent sequel, but not much more. And it's kind of disappointing that a highly anticipated sequel would turn out this average. It's barely a step up from Cars 2, but it's more disappointing than that film, because I wouldn't have high expectations with a Cars film compared to The Incredibles.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Incredibles 2?
Incredibles was one of my favourite films growing up. It's still one of my favourite Disney Pixar films. So obviously I had high hopes for Incredibles 2. I've only watched it once, so I can't comment too much on it, but I don't think it was very memorable. Like, I can't think of a single moment off the top of my head, whereas every other film I've watched I can think of things. I think it was good that they continued on from where they left off, because sometimes there's a complete skip in it and it doesn't really make sense. So, it's okay. So I agree with your ranking on this one.
Number 18. Cars. Cars isn't one of Pixar's strongest films. I guess I like it overall, but it's not as witty or sophisticated as some of their other works, and it does rely on toilet humour a bit too often. That said, there are strong elements to it. The animation is stunning, as usual for Pixar. The song Our Town is fantastic and definitely deserved its Oscar nomination. The character development is actually pretty strong, and it's interesting to see Lightning McQueen's arc, and how Chick Hicks essentially represents who Lightning would have become if he continued to be self-centered and egotistical. Plus the ending and the message about selflessness being more important than fame and fortune are heartwarming. The story and side characters are fine, I guess, but they're not as good as the side characters in movies like Toy Story or The Incredibles or Ratatouille. It's a good film overall, but I can see why it's not commonly regarded as one of Pixar's best, and while it is better than Cars 2, I did also enjoy that film more.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Cars?
Like I said, Cars is actually one of my favourite Disney Pixar films. I don't know whether that's just because I loved it as a child and it's like continued into adulthood or whatever, but me and my sister both love that film. We watch it quite regularly, to be honest. So I think that is one of my favourites, to be honest. Like, I'm more likely to watch that than Toy Story. I just find it more my type of film, I guess. So yeah, I do love Cars.
Number 17. Finding Dory. Regarding Pixar's sequel catalogue, a lot of them were really unnecessary. The only world that needed expanding on was Toy Story, and maybe Monsters Inc. Finding Nemo and Cars were not stories that needed continuing, even if I did kind of like the films we got out of it. Finding Dory is a good film overall, even if it's not as good as the original, which I never really cared for much either. The animation is absolutely gorgeous, and a step up from the already timeless animation in the first film. There's some funny jokes every so often, although some of them, particularly characters speaking quote-unquote whale, get old very quickly, and the film does leave space for Dory and Marlin to continue developing from the previous film. That said, it does ultimately feel too derivative of the original film, and somehow even more predictable, even if it does have some touching moments. Halfway through watching, I felt like I was watching a kid-friendly version of Memento, seeing as in both films the protagonist has short-term memory loss and uses clues to solve a family-related issue. In Leonard's case, it's using tattoos and Polaroids to find the killer of his wife, while for Dory, it's using aquarium-related clues to find her parents. So, ultimately it's fine, it has some funny moments, the animation is great, and the voice acting is still pretty spot on. But it is ultimately one of Pixar's most unnecessary movies, and not as strong as a lot of their other works.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Finding Dory?
So I don't think they could have made a sequel that did Finding Nemo justice. I've only seen this once. I didn't even watch it in the cinema, I don't think. I think some of the characters are quite lovable, and the plot is original, kind of. And Baby Dory was adorable, but again, it's not one of the most memorable films that they've done. So I don't really feel the need to watch it again. So I don't know.
Number 16. A Bug's Life. A Bug's Life is a good film. That's about it. It's probably slightly better than I remember, but it has a fair amount of flaws. Flick is a relatable protagonist, and I identify with how his good intentions often blow up in his face. Hopper is a great villain, and not only do the design and Kevin Spacey's vocal performance bring such an intimidating nature to him, but he's an interesting villain, primarily in how he never underestimates the power of his opponents and doesn't give up on his evil goals. Though it's probably a good thing we only see him once in the first half, because I don't think I want to see him touch all the other grasshoppers inappropriately. The circus bugs have some funny moments every so often, even if their traits being the punchline gets old every so often. The story for the film isn't great though, and while I normally hate the lie reveal cliche in films, at least movies like Over the Hedge give the side characters a good reason to be angry with the protagonist. The reason that Bug's Life has the worst use of it is because Flick has the giant bird idea for the ants, yet they turn on him anyway because the bugs who help devise the plan are circus bugs. They have the bird, so why is Flick lying such a big deal? It feels like a really lazy way to create dramatic tension, except really it brings the film to a grinding halt, and it does so with rather half-baked character motivations. That said, I do really like Randy Newman's musical score, and as usual, each piece of music fits every scene. So it's a good film, but it's not the same level as other Pixar movies.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on A Bug's Life?
So Bug's Life is one of the films that I remember loving as a kid, and I do think it's quite interesting. Obviously, not many kids and people in general like bugs, so to be able to do a successful film about them that I enjoy personally, I think it's quite impressive for Disney, so kudos to them for that. But it's not one that I watch over and over, and I do watch quite a lot of Disney films on a regular basis. Pixar, Disney, all of their little categories like Marvel and everything that they own now. So it's okay. It's not one of my favourite Pixar films though.
Number 15. Cars 3. You know, while most Pixar sequels feel unnecessary, this is probably the best non-Toy Story Pixar sequel. Monsters University doesn't count because it's a prequel. Granted, it's no masterpiece, and it has problems, but it has a lot of good stuff as well. The animation is stunning, as usual for a Pixar film, and it improves on that of Cars 2. The story is actually pretty good. When I first watched it, I thought it was going to be boring and predictable, but I really liked the ending, and the way they executed their message. Not just about not giving up, but also using your success to help others achieve their own goals. There are some moments that genuinely make me laugh as well, particularly Lightning McQueen using the simulator. This honestly made me laugh all the way through. Though granted, the use of the argument bit annoys me, and it leads to a rather cringy resolution.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I yelled. It wasn't your fault.
What the hell was that?
But I liked it overall, and I wouldn't mind if this was the last one, mainly because I'm not a big fan of the Cars franchise in general, but also because I think this wraps up Lightning McQueen's arc nicely.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Cars 3?
I really like that you've ranked this one above Cars 2. And Cars, I guess. I do love the original Cars movie, like that's my childhood. But Cars 3 is like, it's got so many elements that I love, like the feminism in it. And I love Cruz Ramirez, she's just such an original character. And I think the plot is really nice. Like if it wasn't Cars, if it was like a real plot, like with real people, I feel like it would be a good storyline. So I think this is one of their better films that they've done. I know a lot of people will have issues with it. I don't know why, but I love it. So I agree with the ranking on this one.
Number 14. Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo is a good film, but as I said earlier, I didn't really care much for it. It's definitely one of the more overrated Pixar films. Don't get me wrong, there's some great stuff in it, but then there's some less good stuff. The animation is aged like fine wine, no excuse for Shark Tale to be visually ugly and boring now. Albert Brooks brings a lot to his vocal performance as Marlin, and Marlin does get some good laughs out of me, as well as some strong character development. The scene in which Nigel flies through the dentist checkup room is hilarious. Thomas Newman's musical score is absolutely gorgeous. The message about not being overly protective is well executed, and that's about it. A lot of the humour seems to consist mostly of toilet jokes, only one of which really made me laugh that much. The joke about Dory repeatedly forgetting Nemo's name gets old pretty quickly, and the scene in which Marlin and Dory bounce on jellyfish doesn't really enhance the story. I also have to question why Coral swam towards her eggs, considering that the barracuda would follow her, eat her, and then see the eggs and think, ooh, lovely eggs. The journey itself is nothing amazing either, it's just fine. So yeah, another good effort from Pixar, but one of the most overrated animated films in my opinion.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Finding Nemo?
Yeah, I do agree with a lot of your opinions on Finding Nemo. I definitely loved it as a kid, but again, it's one of the films that I won't really watch over and over. Some of the humour was good in it, and it's quite an original plot again, but yeah. It's okay. I don't know, it's a good one for kids. I don't think it's one that grows up with you though. Like, I don't remember any jokes that were easy to understand as an adult and that kind of thing, but it was okay.
Number 13. Monsters University. While I would have preferred to see a sequel to Monsters Inc., especially given the thousands of opportunities to move the story forward, the idea that monsters had to be educated is an interesting premise, and Monsters University features some interesting ideas surrounding it. Granted, there are a lot of college movie cliches that prevent it reaching the same level on an excellent canister as other Pixar movies, or indeed the first film, including the lie revealed bit, which really annoys me, although thankfully it doesn't derail the story as much as it did for A Bug's Life, as well as stereotypes like having nerds and bully jocks.
There are two kinds of college students, jocks and nerds. As a jock, it is my duty to give nerds a hard time.
But it has redeeming qualities that make it a good film overall, and a big improvement on Brave and Cars 2. The animation and voice acting are really good. The character development is really strong. I like how both Mike and Sully are pretentious at first, but then see how well they work together and work as a team to pull off something impressive. It does give us that really good message about how you don't have to follow the same path everyone else is. It's not the same level as other Pixar films, but I still think it's worth seeing, even if I would have preferred to see them expand on the first film's ending, and I hope that someday they will.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Monsters University?
So I do love this movie. I think it's quite light-hearted, and it's something that a lot of students, for example, can relate to, like being the odd one out and trying to prove yourself and things like that, and trying to live up to examples that your parents have set and things like that. I think it's a good movie for every audience, so I agree that this ranking should be pretty high. And Monsters Inc. in general is just such an interesting story, them like making monsters so lovable. So yeah, I do love this one.
Number 12. Monsters Inc. Although Monsters Inc. doesn't feel as sophisticated or subtle as a lot of other Pixar films, it's still a really good film. and it provides a lot of creativity, humour, emotional depth, and interesting visuals for both kids and parents to enjoy. Sully and Mike are a great duo, with John Goodman and Billy Crystal being perfectly cast, and Goodman representing the wholesome side to Sully, and Crystal representing the comedic side to Mike brilliantly. The side characters are also hilarious. Once again we have John Goodman and Steve Buscemi working together, though this time it's a kids film, so sadly you don't get to see Sully telling Randall to shut the fuck up, or Sully ranting about the rules.
Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
It's so weird to have watched John Goodman in so many family movies growing up, and then hear him swear like a fucking sailor in The Big Lebowski. Great film by the way, highly recommended. As well as providing a rather unique and creative world setting, it's fun to explore the atmosphere of the film, and see all the little ideas and details brought to the screen, amidst some questionable choices. The most enjoyable scene is seeing Sully and Mike have to get back to Boo's door while riding the door storage facility tracks. That said, what monster thought it'd be good to design it like a Disneyland ride? Oh. The animation is also very detailed and visually interesting, and it still holds up pretty well today. As usual, Randy Newman provides a great musical score, going for some rather heartfelt music this time around, as can also be said with Toy Story 2, and gives us the song which earned him his first Oscar, which is a nice song about friendship. It's nothing amazing, but it's still a really entertaining film that can be enjoyed by all ages.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Monsters Inc?
So again, I really like how they've made like monsters not scary for kids, and just seeing like Sully go against the norm and completely change the way everyone looks at things, and Mike Wazowski managing to succeed by getting people to laugh instead of scream and just things like that. It's very original, the whole plot, with them being scared of toys and things like human things touching them, and it does have a lot of humour that I think stays with you. Like, I still find some of it funny, which is good. Yeah, so yeah, that should be ranked highly. I agree with that.
Number 11. Coco. There's so much great stuff in Coco, but there's also too many story problems for me to call it a masterpiece. That said, it's still a really good film, and comes close to being a great one. The animation is absolutely fantastic. Only Pixar can make the Land of the Dead so inviting. The song Remember Me is brilliant, and I love the different ways it can be sung, for upbeat occasions and for emotional occasions. And I do like the themes the film addresses, primarily permanent loss, and the amount of humour and emotion the film so successfully conveys. That said, the film does ride a fair number of clichés. The protagonist having an interest in something their family opposes? Check. An argument that leads to a predictable reconciliation? Check. Twist villain in a Disney or Pixar movie? Check. Villain monologues about their plan not knowing that hundreds of people can hear? Check. But even with those clichés, this is a really good film overall, and I love the things it addresses, the amazing visuals, and the respect to Mexican culture.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Coco?
So I love Coco. I think it's really interesting when they explore other cultures, and I think they went about it in a really respectful way. And I think the plot, some of it is cliche, but some of it is quite original. Like, I'm usually able to call the ending of films so easily. Like, I can guess lines that are going to be said and things like that. But there was a massive plot twist in this. I think I did kind of suss it, to be honest, but it took me a while to get there, which I think is good, because obviously kids aren't going to be able to guess what's going to happen. So I did like this one. I need to rewatch it. I have only seen this once, but I do remember this one. So, well done, Pixar.
Number 10. Onward. Still one of my favourite Pixar films. Sure, we do get an argument between the two brothers at the end, but otherwise it's brilliant. The world building is surprisingly imaginative, and I like how they address how magic used to exist, but has ultimately disappeared over time. The animation looks great as well, as can be said with most Pixar films. While the film has a lot of good laughs, I see it more on the drama side, as it explores themes like the loss of family, and it is so wholesome, and I love the way it ended. Tom Holland and Chris Pratt are perfectly cast as Ian and Barley, and both bring so much to their roles, with Holland representing Ian's socially awkward traits, Pratt representing Barley's reckless and confident traits, and both conveying their emotional tone of delivery brilliantly, and we have the amazing Octavia Spencer bringing so much energy and humour to her role as the Manticore. It's creative, it's funny, it's wholesome, and it's still among my favourite Pixar films.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Onward?
Okay, I love Onward. I did watch this recently, and honestly, it's one of the, if not the, most emotional Pixar film for me. Like, I'm almost in tears throughout the whole movie. It's like so, it's just amazing. Like, and the magic and everything, it's just so original. and I love it. Like, I can't speak highly enough of this film. It's definitely one of my favourites. Like, it's got an incredible cast. The plot is original. The sibling love, like, oh, I just love the characters in this so much. I definitely need to buy some merch or something. So I agree, this is definitely top 10. This probably would be one of the highest for me, but I don't know, I'll have to see what other films there are first.
Number 9. WALL-E. The first 30 minutes of WALL-E are absolutely phenomenal. It's just amazing how much is said without saying anything, and the relationship between WALL-E and Eve is really wholesome, and it remains that way for the rest of the film, even if the next 60 minutes did make it a little less good for me. But even though I didn't think as much of the stuff in space as I did about the stuff on Earth, I still love this movie to pieces, and I love all the topics the film comments on, such as the negative consequences of pollution, littering and laziness. The film is literally telling people to stop littering, and yet nobody talks about it anymore. Why not? The film has an interesting use of colours, with the graininess of the polluted Earth contrasting with the bright colours of the spaceship environment. The different styles of music, such as intense, calm and use of licensed songs, really suits every scene, and the song Down to Earth is great. Another great film from Pixar, and one of several examples of a kids' film that makes an important point about the world we live in.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on WALL-E?
So WALL-E is definitely one of the best Pixar films ever. It's got such like an important meaning. I feel like it's kind of, yeah, it's very much disappeared. Like, no one talks about WALL-E, and it's one of the most beautiful films, and it's original, and it talks about real issues. And I feel like kids today probably aren't being shown this film. Like, I don't know, I never hear about it, but it's incredible. So I think we need to somehow bring that back. This definitely deserves to be top 10.
Number 8. Up. Most people tend to remember Up for the first 15 minutes. Hell, it even has its own Wikipedia article. But even though this part is the best remembered, I think the whole film is great. True, the rest of the film doesn't quite live up to the first 15 minutes, but I still really enjoy what it gives. The animation is great, the score is absolutely gorgeous, the characters and their motivations are interesting and legitimate, it finds an almost perfect balance between funny and serious, and the dogs are legit hilarious, and it's just so wholesome. Although Carl is Mardy a lot of the film, you can understand why this is, and how pissed off he is about the idea of losing his house, because it's essentially the heart and soul of his relationship with Ellie. It's how they met, and Carl's devastation over not being able to take Ellie to Paradise Falls is heartbreaking. And then we get to that scene, which I won't spoil, but it makes Carl see the situation in a new light, and perhaps enables him to get over his wife's death. It's funny, it's emotional, it's entertaining, and it's among Pixar's best.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Up?
So Up is one of my favourite Pixar films again. It's also my mum's favourite Pixar film, I think. It's like, it's just, again, I love original plots, and this is so original. And like, this is one that I haven't watched in years. I need to watch it again. I don't tend to watch films that I know are sad, and I know it's like obviously happy throughout the majority of the movie, but the sad part sticks with me, so I have to force myself to kind of watch it, and then I love it and realise that I should have watched it a lot sooner than I did. But again, this does deserve to be rated highly, because it's Up, you know. Yeah, so I agree with a lot of your opinions on this.
Number 7. Toy Story 4. So it's the weakest of the Toy Story films, but it's still great in my opinion, and while many call this an unnecessary cash grab, I actually think this wraps up the franchise and Woody's arc nicely. Sure, the film keeps a lot of the old characters in the background, but I'd rather they keep the non-crucial characters in the background than make them main characters when they're not integral to the main story, which is honestly a problem I have with a lot of sequels. And the new characters are pretty awesome and even get some interesting development arcs. Forky is a character a lot of people relate to, and I like his development from being suicidal to learning of his importance as Bonnie's favourite toy. Duke Kaboom is a character I partially relate to, in how he became despondent over being unwanted. This is something I address more in my video on bullying, to realising he could still achieve amazing things. And Keanu Reeves is so perfectly cast. Bunny and Ducky go from longing to be loved by a kid, to seeing the potential benefits of being lost toys. The one character who isn't really that interesting or have much of an arc is Giggles McDimple, nor does she really do anything in the whole film. Otherwise I like these characters, and they do serve the story in some way. Woody, Buzz and Bo all have their own arcs as well, even if Buzz's arc seems a little weird. I don't know, I feel like Buzz should know that his voice box is not his inner voice, even if it does lead to that great line at the end.
Listen to your inner voice.
Woody and Bo's relationship develops brilliantly though, and I like the way their reunion builds up to them realising they still have feelings for each other, while Woody realises there's more to life than being loved by a kid. While Woody has a conflict regarding his owner in each film, The end of this film ends any potential conflict Woody may face, hence why this is such a perfect conclusion. On top of that, the animation is absolutely stunning, and all four of these films show just how far CGI has come, from Toy Story in 1995 to Toy Story 4 in 2019. Toy Story 4 is funny, emotional, and visually stunning, and a great conclusion to the franchise.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Toy Story 4?
So, Toy Story 4 is actually one of my least favourite Pixar films, or films in general. I felt like I was watching a kid's version of Endgame. Like, a lot of the endings had like parallels with exactly what happened in Avengers Endgame. So I didn't like the ending. I suppose the rest of the film I did like. I just felt like the ending was just like Avengers Endgame. But I do love Forky, and seeing Bo Peep as a strong character. I just think that they shouldn't have split the gang up at the end, spoiler alert. So yeah, I wouldn't have ranked that highly just because of how unoriginal the ending was. Like, it was exactly like Endgame. Sorry to say it, Disney, but yeah, my bad.
Number 6. Toy Story 2. After revisiting the first two Toy Story films, it was hard for me to pick which was better, but I decided to go with the first film by a thin margin, primarily because I think it has a slightly better story and character development, and it is more groundbreaking. That said, Toy Story 2 is also absolutely amazing, and I really enjoyed revisiting it. Although the first film has a better story and character development, I think this one provides Woody with a stronger conflict, and much like the first film, the conflict is unique to the characters being toys. And Woody also has strong character development in this film, as does Jessie, to be fair. And the characters this film introduces are memorable and well fleshed out. The animation had become more advanced by the time Toy Story 2 came out, and it shows in this film, and it allows the animators to put in even more detail than before. The film is also really funny, and like the first film, it gives us a ton of great laughs, including great references to Star Wars and Jurassic Park. It's especially great to see all the parallels with the first film, like Buzz encountering the utility belt Buzz in the same way Woody encountered him, and how Woody was trying to tell Buzz he was a toy, only for the tables to turn in Toy Story 2. I enjoy a lot of Randy Newman's scores and songs, but When She Loved Me is probably his best song. It's perfectly incorporated into the scene, it's emotional, and the attention to detail in showing how Emily moved on from Jessie is pretty outstanding. A great sequel to a great film, and one of Pixar's best films.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Toy Story 2?
Okay, so this is a controversial one. Toy Story 2, in my opinion, is better than Toy Story 1. Toy Story 1, I don't remember a single thing about that film. It just doesn't appeal to me. I know that I liked it more when Jessie came into it. I don't know. I do need to rewatch the first one, but I know that I definitely prefer the second. The Toy Story 2 is just one that I will watch in the future and over, and I watched it a lot as a kid as well, whereas Toy Story 1, I think I've probably watched 2 times maximum. So yeah, I agree that this should be ranked highly.
Number 5. Toy Story. I loved Toy Story as a kid, and I still love it today. The animation is obviously dated now, but my god was it amazing for 1995, and the attention to detail is mind-blowing. They couldn't just put less detail into the shadows or the locations and said it was good for its time.
But actually, no.
They went the extra mile and put these details in. Granted, the human designs don't look quite right, but for the time they were pretty amazing to see. The script is also amazing, providing a simple enough plot and message for children, while balancing this out with enough wit and sophistication for adults to appreciate and enjoy. It helps when Tom Hanks delivers Woody's more comedic lines so brilliantly. Looking at the way Woody and Buzz develop as the film goes on is pretty fantastic, with Woody learning about being there for Andy is more important than being the favourite, and Buzz going from delusional and egotistical to realising and accepting his purpose as Andy's favourite toy. The scene in which Buzz finds out he's not real is much more devastating as an adult, because it's at this age that you realise the true meaning behind it, and how Buzz essentially realises that everything he believed was a lie. Tim Allen's line delivery perfectly matches Buzz's temporary spiral into depression, including those brief bursts of comedy.
I am Mrs. Nesbit.
Randy Newman's musical score is rather upbeat and ambitious, and each piece of music suits the scene it's matched with, especially the music when Woody and Buzz chase the moving van, which by the way is a fun and awesome climax. One of the most groundbreaking, and also one of the best animated movies ever made. Toy Story is fun, colourful, and hilarious for all ages.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Toy Story?
So hearing your opinion on it, I think that I should probably give Toy Story another chance. I know I have spoken to other people though that have said they prefer Toy Story 2 more as well. But again, because I don't remember Toy Story, I can't really compare them fairly and do it justice. At the moment though, Toy Story 2 is in my opinion, better than Toy Story 1. But yeah.
Number 4. Toy Story 3. This was my favourite Toy Story film as a kid, and as an adult, it still is. I enjoy it just as much as an adult as I did when I was a kid, possibly even more so, because I've discovered even more subtlety and detail as I got older. I always loved the clever tactics of the escape plan, and how elaborate the whole thing was. The animation is absolutely stunning, and these films honestly show an ongoing improvement in CGI animation. The incinerator scene is still one of the most powerful moments in film altogether. The characters are hilarious, especially Ken. The villain has an interesting backstory, the music is amazing, and it does conclude Andy's arc really well. The Toy Story films really expand on their world, and give us so many interesting locations to visit, and every single time it provides such an interesting atmosphere. While the Sunnyside daycare setting is a lot darker than other Pixar films, it's pretty much a parody of prison films which are almost always aimed at adults and take a really dark approach. It's clear as to why this is, and thankfully it doesn't stay this way at the end. Toy Story 3 is funny, emotional, stunning, and overall just really entertaining to watch for both kids and adults.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Toy Story 3?
So Toy Story 3, again, I do prefer that to the original Toy Story, and it's better than Toy Story 4. But Toy Story 2 is still better for me. I just find that one an easier watch, I guess. Toy Story 3 it's quite dark, and I'm more, when I watch cartoons I want them to be like light-hearted and fun and happy, which kind of contradicts the fact that I love Onward so much, but Onward's just so heartwarming, like, I don't know, I can't fault Onward in any way. So, yeah, I do like Lotso though. I have a giant Lotso bear somewhere.
Number 3. Inside Out. After Toy Story 3, Pixar produced 3 films that didn't live up to it by a long shot. But in 2015, they released Inside Out, and it was an outstanding comeback. I saw this film when it first came out at the age of 14, and I loved it then. Revisiting it at 20, I love it even more. There's so much creativity, so much subtlety, so much humour. It's easily the best non-Brad Bird Pixar film. Granted, there are a few plot holes, like why couldn't Joy send the memories up to Riley's headquarters when those guys could send the gum commercial one up? Or how could Riley's train of thought be destroyed when she still has a train of thought about running away? But when almost everything else works so brilliantly, it's not such a big deal. The film deals with rather hard life issues, and it never pulls off any happily ever afters. It takes its themes seriously, and I strongly admire that, considering very few kids' films are brave enough to do that. It very effectively shows that all your emotions, including the negative ones, have a purpose, and that's ultimately what Joy realises about sadness. The voice acting is superb, and the choices so perfectly fit the characters. Amy Poehler in particular knocks out the park as Joy, so perfectly providing that tone of voice where she attempts to stay positive at all times, and when she finally does break down into tears. The animation is also amazing. Just seeing the vibrance of the upbeat Minnesota contrasting with the bleak areas of San Francisco. I also love the different animation styles they use when Bing Bong suggests the shortcut. It's so imaginative, and it just seems like a fun experiment for the animators to play with. It almost reminds me of those episodes of The Simpsons or Family Guy, where they play with different styles of animation based on what the episode is themed around. Most of all though, the film is so clever in how it establishes and executes most of its ideas surrounding the atmosphere of Riley's mind. Riley's imaginary Canadian boyfriends, dream productions, the personality islands, imagination... wait. South Park already did that one. Right. But yeah, overall, Inside Out is such a funny, emotionally gripping, creative, mature, subtle masterpiece, and easily among Pixar's 3 best films.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Inside Out?
Inside Out, in my opinion, is phenomenal. It's original. Like, who would think... Well, I've not seen anything like it anyway. Who would think to, like, characterise the emotions, like, in your head and stuff? I do love that film. I have a toy of disgust somewhere. I know exactly where they are. They're, like, behind my bed. This one's one that I think every generation finds funny. They have a lot of adult humour in that film, as well as things that kids will like, and the colour and everything. However, we need to talk about Bing Bong. Bing Bong owns my heart, and I hope he's okay, wherever he ended up. Okay, but yeah, I agree with that one being ranked so high.
Number 2. Ratatouille. Ratatouille is Pixar's most underrated film, and among my 30 favourite films of all time. It's stunning, it's funny, it's sophisticated, it's just brilliant. So many films just have these really interesting and suited colour palettes, from the use of red in American Beauty to the many vibrant colours used by Wes Anderson. And Ratatouille could certainly be added to my list of the greatest colour palettes in movies. the bleak and grainy sewers contrasting with the vibrance of the streets of Paris, and the contents of Gusteau's kitchen. It just so beautifully throws itself into the world of cooking. There's not a single unmemorable character in this film. We have the ambitious Remy, the badass Colette, the intimidating Ego, and such hilarious side characters as Linguini, Skinner, and all the other cooks. Hell, one of them was voiced by BoJack Horseman. What's not to like? I offended a fish with this thumb. Many characters grow and develop as the film goes on, and I think I can say this the most about Linguini, Django, and most especially Anton Ego. Although Linguini begins adventures outside working at Gusteau's and seems to neglect Remy too often, he comes to the realization that Remy ultimately got him to where he is, and decides to give him credit for his achievement. Django seems dissatisfied with Remy's desperation for good food, but eventually realizes how much cooking means to him. And then we have Anton Ego, who starts as overly harsh and, well, egotistical, but then comes to the realization of not just the benefit of simply enjoying a meal every so often, but also what Gusteau truly meant by his motto, anyone can cook. And this leads to one of the most perfect endings in cinema history. Many people would say Up is Michael Giacchino's best score. I think that title belongs to his Ratatouille score. It's absolutely gorgeous to listen to. It suits every scene, and it really immerses you in the atmosphere the film creates. One of Pixar's best and most sophisticated films from the true genius of Pixar, Brad Bird.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on Ratatouille?
Okay, Ratatouille, I watch that all the time. It's, again, original. Like, Disney Pixar do have a lot of original films. Who would think to make a rat be able to cook and, well, they are intelligent, I suppose. But anyway, being able to control Linguini by pulling his hair and everything. And I have been to Disneyland Paris and ridden the Ratatouille ride, which is so cool. I do love this one so much. And my sister loves it. We watch this one all the time. Is it underrated? Like, I don't know, because I love it so much. I don't really know what other people are saying about it, but that's one of the best Pixar films ever. I agree. This is definitely number 2. Okay. I'm interested to see what you put as number 1.
And my number 1 favourite Pixar film is The Incredibles. The Incredibles is my favourite Pixar movie. While it wouldn't make my top 10 movies of all time, it would probably make my top 20, and it would probably be in my top 5 favourite animated films as well. I suppose this is another case where I'll have to do a separate video to go into depth on why this film is the best Pixar film, but here, I'll go over some of the main details. The script is one of the best ever written in any film ever. It's creative, it's smart, it's funny, it's emotional, and above all, always entertaining. Despite some very minor flaws in the script, The Incredibles is never ever boring. The film never relies on filler to be entertaining. All the comedic scenes and action scenes feel properly incorporated into the story. The emotional depth doesn't feel forced either. The situations and dialogue feel genuine and like real people talking. It doesn't even seem like it's trying to be emotional. It just is almost effortlessly. The character development is brilliant as well, with Mr. Incredible going from a man focused primarily on his superhero life to understanding the importance of his family, and Elastigirl going from someone focused primarily on family life and keeping their powers secret to understanding when using their powers is necessary. The action scenes are lively and awesome, and Michael Giacchino's musical score fits so perfectly with it. Seeing the way the Paws use their powers to defeat Syndrome's minions is pretty spectacular. The humour is just iconic. I mean, who doesn't remember the "Where is my supersuit" scene? Or Bob damaging his car? Or that kid on the tricycle? This is one of Pixar's funniest films, and Brad Bird is a genius when it comes to writing not just emotional depth, but also sharp comedy. Pixar's best film, and one of my all-time favourites. If you haven't seen it already, fire it up and experience this gem for yourself.
Hey Sophie, what were your thoughts on The Incredibles?
So I'm a massive fan of superhero movies in general, so I feel like that's probably stemmed from the fact that I did love Incredibles so much as a kid. I'm pretty sure I saw this at the cinema with my dad, and we were waiting ages for number 2 to come out, and there was also an Incredibles game, I'm pretty sure, that I used to play all the time. So Incredibles, the humour in that is amazing. The plot, everything about that, there's like not one dull moment. I feel like every scene was like integral to the plot, and I don't know, the characters are really lovable. And now we need a Frozen movie. We don't need another Incredibles movie. I think they should focus on Frozen. But I agree, Incredibles is a brilliant movie.
You know, even the worst Pixar movies have saving graces, and they're still far better than a lot of kids' films these days. Even when Pixar does give us more mediocre films, it also gives us creative, mature, intriguing family movies, and I'm still looking forward to seeing what they make in the future.
Good to have you for the video, Soph.
Glad to contribute, Ned.
And thanks to the viewers for watching. Now, I've got some other movies to address. I just hope they bring something new to the table in terms of people's thoughts on them. And it really immerses you in the atmosphere of the film creates. Oh, bollocks. If he gets the fact that Edna had to stitch up Mr. Incredible's quote-unquote hobo soup? Soup? Fucking fuck.